The Portuguese Empire, how a small kingdom conquered the world. Welcome to Pages from History, where the greatest stories of human civilization come alive before your eyes. If you appreciate journeys through time and discovery, please support our channel by subscribing and activating the notification bell. Today, we present to you the extraordinary tale of the Portuguese Empire, the first global empire in human history. Stay with us until the end to witness how a small kingdom on the edge of Europe conquered the world and changed history forever. First, the birth of maritime ambition. In the westernmost corner of medieval Europe, a small kingdom gazed upon the endless Atlantic Ocean with dreams that stretched beyond the horizon. Portugal, a nation of barely 1 million souls, possessed an ambition that would reshape the entire world within a few generations. The year was 1415, and the cobblestone streets of Lisbon echoed with whispers of a bold new vision taking shape in royal chambers. Prince Henry, third son of King John I, stood upon the cliffs of Sagres contemplating ventures no European had ever dared to imagine. The prince established a center of maritime knowledge where the greatest minds of the age gathered to unlock the secrets of navigation. Astronomers from distant lands, cartographers with ancient wisdom, and shipbuilders of extraordinary skill converged upon this windswept Portuguese promontory to create something revolutionary. Within stone walls overlooking the crashing waves, scholars studied Arabic texts containing celestial knowledge passed down through centuries of Islamic scholarship. They translated astronomical tables, perfected the astrolabe, and developed new instruments that would guide ships across uncharted waters with unprecedented precision. Portuguese shipwrights labored in coastal dockyards, developing a revolutionary vessel that would change maritime history forever and become legendary. The caravel emerged from their workshops, a ship of shallow draft and triangular lateen sails capable of sailing against the wind itself. This remarkable vessel could navigate coastal waters and river estuaries while remaining sturdy enough to survive the violent storms of the open Atlantic Ocean. Its design represented the culmination of Mediterranean and Atlantic shipbuilding traditions merged into one perfect creation for exploration and discovery. Prince Henry sent expedition after expedition southward along the African coast, each voyage pushing further into waters Europeans believed cursed by sea monsters. The sailors returned with tales of golden shores, strange peoples, and riches beyond imagination waiting in lands no Christian had ever witnessed. The fear that had paralyzed European sailors for centuries began to crumble with each successful voyage that returned safely to Portuguese harbors. Maps once filled with drawings of serpents and warnings of certain death gradually transformed into accurate coastlines marked with promising anchorages and trading opportunities. By the time Prince Henry breathed his last in 1460, Portuguese ships had ventured past Cape Bojader and reached the shores of modern-day Sierra Leone. The foundation of history's first global empire had been laid by a visionary prince who never himself sailed beyond sight of his beloved homeland. Second, conquering the African coastline. The death of Prince Henry did not diminish Portuguese maritime ambition, for his vision had ignited a flame that would burn across continents. King Afonso V continued the great work, sending fleets ever southward along the mysterious African coast toward unknown destinations and unimaginable wealth. Portuguese sailors encountered civilizations of remarkable sophistication as they pushed deeper into African waters previously unknown to European vessels and merchants. The Kingdom of Benin impressed them with its bronze artistry, while the gold of the Akan peoples sparked dreams of endless wealth flowing into Lisbon's coffers. Along the Gulf of Guinea, Portuguese traders established fortified posts that would become the foundations of a commercial empire spanning the globe. The fortress of Elmina rose upon the Gold Coast in 1482, its white walls gleaming against the tropical green as a symbol of Portuguese power. These trading posts operated as links in an ever-growing chain of commerce stretching from Lisbon to the edges of the known world and beyond. African gold, ivory, and pepper flowed northward while European textiles, metalwork, and weapons traveled south in an exchange that transformed both continents forever. Portuguese captains learned the complex patterns of Atlantic winds and currents that would later enable their successors to reach distant India and Brazil. They discovered that sailing far out into the ocean before turning south actually shortened their journeys and avoided dangerous coastal hazards and unfavorable winds. The fortress factories along the African coast served not merely as trading posts, but as resupply stations for the greater voyages that visionary minds already contemplated. Each stone laid in these distant outposts brought the dream of reaching the Indies by sea closer to magnificent reality. In 1488, a weathered captain named Bartolomé Dias achieved what many believed impossible when his storm-battered ships rounded Africa's southern tip. He named it the Cape of Storms, but King John II wisely renamed it the Cape of Good Hope, for it promised the sea route to India. Dias returned to Lisbon bearing news that would transform world history, for the way to the riches of the East now lay open to Portuguese ambition. The spices of India, the silks of China, and the treasures of the Orient suddenly seemed within reach of determined sailors willing to brave the unknown. The African coast had been conquered not by armies but by courage, knowledge, and an unshakable determination to overcome every obstacle that nature and fear placed before them. Portugal now possessed the keys to unlock the wealth of the entire world through mastery of the ocean highways. Third, the voyage to India. King Manuel I ascended the Portuguese throne with a singular obsession burning in his royal heart and commanding his every strategic decision. He would complete the great work of his predecessors and establish direct sea contact with the legendary wealth of India and the Spice Kingdoms. In July of 1497, for ships under the command of Vasco da Gama departed Lisbon on a voyage that would change the course of human history. The São Gabriel, São Rafael, Berrio, and a supply ship carried provisions for a journey of unprecedented length into waters no European had ever sailed. Da Gama was a man of iron will and fierce determination, chosen specifically for his ability to impose discipline and overcome any challenge that might arise. His crew of approximately 170 men represented the finest sailors Portugal could muster for this momentous undertaking into the unknown. The fleet swung far out into the Atlantic, following the Volta do Mar technique that Portuguese navigators had perfected over decades of African exploration. For 3 months, they sailed without sight of land, trusting their instruments and celestial observations to guide them safely around Africa's southern extremity. They rounded the Cape of Good Hope in late November, battling storms that tested both ships and men to their absolute breaking points of endurance. The crews whispered of turning back, but Da Gama's unwavering command held them to their course toward glory and the riches of the East. Along the East African coast, they encountered Arab traders who had dominated Indian Ocean commerce for centuries and viewed these newcomers with deep suspicion. The Portuguese navigated complex diplomatic waters, securing pilots who could guide them across the final stretch of ocean to the Malabar coast. On May 20th, 1498, the lookout's cry announced the sighting of the Indian coastline rising from the tropical haze like a dream made real. The city of Calicut appeared before them, its busy harbor filled with ships from Arabia, Persia, and distant China trading precious goods. The Zamarin of Calicut received these strange visitors from the Western Ocean with curiosity mixed with the contempt of a sophisticated ruler for apparent barbarians. The Portuguese gifts of cloth and trinkets seemed laughable compared to the treasures that flowed through Calicut's markets from across the known world. Despite the diplomatic difficulties, Da Gama secured enough pepper and spices to prove the voyage's commercial viability and justify the immense investment Portugal had made. He departed Indian waters in August, beginning a harrowing return journey that would claim the lives of half his crew to scurvy and disease. Fourth, Empire of the Eastern Seas. Da Gama's triumphant return to Lisbon in September 1499 sparked celebrations throughout Portugal and sent shockwaves across all of Europe and beyond. The spices he carried were worth 60 times the cost of the entire expedition, proving that the sea route to India promised unimaginable wealth. King Manuel immediately dispatched a massive fleet of 13 ships under Pedro Álvares Cabral to establish permanent Portuguese presence in Indian waters and begin regular trade. This expedition accidentally discovered Brazil when storms pushed them far westward, adding an entire continent to Portuguese claims. The Portuguese approach to Eastern trade differed fundamentally from the peaceful commerce that had characterized Indian Ocean exchange for countless centuries before their arrival. They came not merely to trade, but to dominate. Their cannon-armed ships capable of destroying any fleet that challenged their ambitions for total control. Afonso de Albuquerque emerged as the architect of Portuguese Maritime Empire, a brilliant strategist who understood that controlling key ports meant controlling entire trade networks. He captured Goa in 1510, transforming it into the glittering capital of Portuguese India that would endure for 4.5 centuries. The conquest of Malacca in 1511 gave Portugal command over the narrow strait through which all trade between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea had to pass. Ships carrying spices from the Moluccas, silks from China, and treasures from Japan now paid tribute to Portuguese customs officials and their waiting cannon. Hormuz fell to Portuguese arms, placing the entrance to the Persian Gulf under Lisbon's control and strangling the ancient overland spice routes that had enriched Venice and Arab merchants. The Mediterranean traders watched helplessly as their centuries-old monopolies crumbled before Portuguese naval supremacy across distant seas. Portuguese traders reached China, establishing a permanent settlement at Macau that would remain under Lisbon's authority until 1999, an extraordinary span of continuous colonial presence. They became the first Europeans to reach Japan, introducing firearms that would transform Japanese warfare and society in dramatic and permanent ways. From Lisbon, a web of trade routes now stretched to Goa, Malacca, Macau, Nagasaki, and countless smaller posts scattered across 3 continents and countless island chains. Portuguese became the language of commerce from the coast of Africa to the shores of Japan, a lingua franca of global trade. The small kingdom that had seemed destined for obscurity on Europe's western margin now commanded an empire upon which, it could truly be said, the sun never set. Portuguese flags flew over fortresses and factories from Brazil to Timor, from Morocco to Mozambique, in an unprecedented global presence. Fifth, legacy of the first global empire. The Portuguese Empire at its zenith represented something entirely new in human history, a truly global commercial and political network spanning 4 continents simultaneously. No previous empire had ever connected such distant lands or brought so many different civilizations into direct contact with each other. The biological exchange that Portuguese ships facilitated transformed ecosystems and diets across the entire world in ways both beneficial and devastating to countless populations. Brazilian cassava fed African populations, American chilies revolutionized Asian cuisines, and European diseases devastated indigenous peoples who had no immunity to foreign pathogens. Portuguese missionaries carried Christianity to lands where the gospel had never been preached, establishing churches from the Congo to Japan and converting millions to Catholic faith. Saint Francis Xavier, sailing on Portuguese ships, became one of history's greatest missionaries, baptizing thousands across India, Southeast Asia, and Japan. The wealth that flowed through Lisbon transformed Portugal from a poor kingdom into one of Europe's richest nations, financing magnificent churches and monasteries that still inspire awe. The Geronimo's Monastery rose in Belém, its intricate manuline stonework celebrating the maritime achievements that had made such splendor possible. Yet the empire carried within it the seeds of its own eventual decline, for Portugal lacked the population to adequately defend its vast scattered possessions against rivals. The Dutch, English, and French watched and learned, building their own naval powers that would eventually challenge and surpass Portuguese dominance across the globe. The union of Portuguese and Spanish crowns in 1580 brought Portugal's empire under Habsburg rule, subordinating its interests to Spanish priorities and draining resources for European conflicts. Dutch and English privateers systematically attacked Portuguese possessions, capturing key fortresses and redirecting trade to Amsterdam and London. By the mid-17th century, Portugal had lost most of its Asian empire, retaining only Goa, Macau, and Timor as remnants of its former eastern glory and commercial supremacy. Brazil became the jewel of Portuguese overseas possessions, its gold and sugar sustaining the mother country through centuries of diminished Asian trade. The legacy of Portuguese exploration endures in languages spoken by over 250 million people across 4 continents today, and in cultural traditions stretching from Lisbon to Tokyo. The Lusophone world remains connected by bonds forged when Portuguese caravels first dared to sail beyond the edge of European knowledge. The age of discovery that Portugal initiated transformed humanity's understanding of the world and ourselves, proving that courage and knowledge could overcome any obstacle nature presented. The first global empire may have faded, but the interconnected world it created remains the foundation of our modern global civilization and shared human heritage. And so concludes our journey through the remarkable story of the Portuguese Empire, the first global empire in human history that forever changed our world. From the windswept cliffs of Sagres to the bustling ports of India and China, we have witnessed how vision, courage, and determination transformed a small kingdom into a global power. This is the legacy of those brave navigators who dared to sail beyond the known world and connect humanity as never before in history. Their achievements remind us that the impossible becomes possible when we refuse to accept the limits others place upon our dreams and ambitions. Thank you for joining us on Pages from History for this epic journey across oceans and centuries. If this story inspired you, please show your support by liking this video and sharing it with fellow history enthusiasts. Leave us a comment telling us which Portuguese explorer impressed you most, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating documentaries that bring history to life. Until next time, keep exploring the pages of our shared human story.